I'll call to order the Board of Health meeting of Monday, March 7th of 2022 at 6 p.m. So first item on our agenda this evening are our minutes from our February 7th meeting. Did you guys have an opportunity to review those minutes?
Yes.
I did as well. I don't think I had any issues with them. Any questions or comments on those? All right, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our February 7th meeting of 2022 as written.
The motion is stated.
I second it.
Any discussion?
No.
Nope. With there being none, then I'll call for the vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Minutes approved. All right, next is a local upgrade approval for 8 Harwood Street. And it looks like there are 3 local upgrades for this, right?
Correct.
So there's a 1-foot reduction from the required separation from high groundwater, the use of 1 deep hole in a proposed disposal area, and then the use of a sieve analysis as a substitute for the perk test.
Correct, and so here's the plan,
Yep.
if you want to take a look at it, and the application.
Now, my question about this, just because, we've done local upgrades for sieve analysis, but give me the rationale on why we would only use 1 deep hole for this.
So the issue was when we went out, it was really cold still, and the ground was frozen, they had a little excavator. So, and that's the reason for the first 2 variants or local upgrade requests, is that we couldn't get deep enough or wide enough, really,
Okay.
to get down. And then the time it took to dig the first hole, they didn't want to dig a second hole, and I was comfortable with this because the neighboring properties in the last, I would say 10, 15 years have upgraded the system, one even more recently than that, and the soil is all the same. I did note to the homeowner and the engineer that as they excavate to install the system, if they notice any difference in the soil in any areas, then we might require a second deep hole. I don't anticipate that happening. Same with the groundwater. In the neighboring properties, they went down 10 feet, didn't hit groundwater. So that's where I would be comfortable with that local upgrade approval of 4 feet instead of 5 feet, just because groundwater tends to be significantly lower than that.
Okay.
We just couldn't get down deep enough because of the weather conditions. And they
Okay.
had to do it because they were selling the property.
Okay, and they did send, I saw in the, I don't know if you saw it from the documents, they did, they did an analysis on the
Yep.
sand and it came back
Yep,
sandy and
Yep.
blah, 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 yeah.
yep.
All right. I just wanted to, we don't typically do that one, that's why I always ask if we haven't seen it. So, all 3 of them are right there. I looked at this at home, so, okay. I can blow it up on my computer and then get it. You're good with this one? Dina, do you have any questions?
No, I was just looking through this, and this is all listed here. So use of only 1 deep hole
Yep,
and use of a sieve analysis is on here.
Yep, and the 4-foot offset to groundwater from the required 5.
It should be on there as well, I think.
I thought I saw that, it was in the front, like a 1-foot, it's a 1-foot reduction.
Oh, yeah, yep.
You got
1
it?
foot, Yep.
All right. Sounds good. Any other questions?
Good.
No? All good? Okay. So I will entertain a motion to approve the 3 local upgrade approvals for 8 Harwood Street with plans drawn up by Jason Dubois Engineering, received on February 15th of 2022. The first local upgrade is for a 1-foot reduction to the required separation from groundwater. So it'll go down to 4 feet from the required 5. The use of only 1 deep hole proposed versus 2, which is required, and the use of a sieve analysis as a substitute for a perk test.
Make the motion stated.
Second it.
Okay. Any other discussion?
No.
No, my only question is, sorry, I meant to ask this. Did Steve review this yet?
I have reviewed it.
You have reviewed
Yep,
it?
there's a couple of items that still need to be revised, nothing critical to the design, just some additional things I'd like to see on there so that I can calculate like proper slope over grade and that type of stuff.
Okay.
And Jason is aware of that, we've emailed.
Okay.
So it won't be approved until those revisions are.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, so with no other discussion, I will call for the vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. approved. All right, director's report out.
So I will try and make this quick. So just an update on establishments without hand sinks. Two have figured out, either one has installed a hand sink, which I was very excited about, and then another has divided their 2-bay into a hand sink, and then one is just like a rinse sink, but everything then goes through the dish machine, so it's not actually, it's more like just storing the dishes and letting them soak. And they're going to work on putting a divider between the 2 bays. Another establishment didn't have a hand sink, is in the process of installing one, and same with another one. They're changing location, so we're working on that. Has been, from some of the inspections I've been out to, hand sinks have been a big issue, big topic. But I think we're getting there, and everyone seems to understand the importance of them. So I'm happy that the establishments are working with me and that we're getting those installed.
I have a question.
Yes.
I just, before you move on to
Yep.
the next one, I just have a question on that one. So did you have an opportunity to review the previous inspection reports to see if it was documented that a hand sink was there, just out of curiosity?
It was not documented.
So there was no documentation at all about it?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
And then regarding activities, I was there, other than the email I sent on Friday, I would say that there's nothing additional to report as of today. We do have our new Board of Health meeting location starting in April. It's going to be Wednesday evenings in the library. That is the current plan. And then I know, Dave, you had asked last time about the shared services grant. So we're hoping, I got an email last Tuesday from Webster, who is the head of the agreements, that our public health nurse and epidemiologist is hopefully going to start soon. So I'm hoping the next week or two we can bring them on board, and then obviously introduce them to our contact tracing public health nurses. I don't know if I'd mentioned this prior, met with Finance Committee, budget was approved, looking to hopefully bring in-house a per diem public health nurse, so we can start our own programs, bring flu clinic in-house in the next couple of years. So I'm very excited about that. And then regarding COVID updates, I'll turn it over shortly. We still have a fair number of test kits. I went to the Winter Festival. We distributed maybe 30. I've been posting on social media that we have them. I was thinking maybe after vacation week, but numbers are down, which is good. So there's
Saw that,
hasn't been
single
that need.
digits.
So we'll keep working on distributing them as needed. Senior Center has taken some, Oxford Housing Authority, police, fire, DPW. They've been appreciative of those.
Did we check in with Orchard Hill to see if they?
Oh, no, but that is on my list.
I
Thank you
would
for that.
probably see if they,
Like at the office or something, right?
yeah, like have them available at the office, so that if they need them, they don't have to contact you, but you can give them a stash of them.
For them to have and
I'm
distribute to
trying
their
to think of
residents.
anywhere else in town. What do you think, Dave?
I thought the community center,
Yeah, community center comes to mind.
they have like the food shelf there, and
Oh,
all
yeah.
the youth programs, all the Silver Sneakers programs are there.
Yeah.
And they have a little office too.
I'll reach out to Shelley. She probably knows. And the food shelf.
The food shelf
also
actually
be
is probably a good
yep.
option to put, maybe have some available there too.
Yep.
Just in case. The only other, and the schools are all set, so we don't have to worry about the schools.
I wonder if the camp, the Claire Barton camp, I mean, they're private, but I don't know.
They're closed right now.
Yeah.
They're starting, like, I actually was on the phone with them today. They're starting to begin that process, talking about summer, getting the applications in.
Okay.
Um,
When do they expire, do you know? Like, what's the earliest
think-
expiration
I
date?
actually think in May.
Ugh.
But
Thing.
but I need to look at the paperwork because I think the state has extended some of those past the expiration date.
Okay.
So I just need to see how long.
All right, so the earliest that you know of is May.
Yeah. And some of the buy next now, I'm gonna reach out to Maven at the state to see if I can redistribute some of the buy next now that we received. Cause we're not gonna go through all that we have for town employees. Especially now that they can take their own homes, like the rapid ones
Right,
are
right.
so much more
Okay,
accessible.
all right. If I think of like anywhere else
Yeah, let me know.
in town to think of. But I'm like running down Main Street in my head.
So the library's back open.
Yeah, it's open. I'm thinking like what programs they have though, like where people might ask. I don't know.
Yeah.
They do, yeah, they just have that community room in the basement. But
The churches might.
That's what I was actually just
Churches?
thinking
Oh,
of the
yeah.
churches.
Yeah.
um
Or you
and
can
like-
ask them.
Yeah.
There's a access point to
You know, when they pick up their bulletin, they can pick up a
that.
test kit.
And I've been inspecting a lot of the
I mean-
churches, so I have that communication. I
Yeah,
have all their
so-
emails and everything, so.
Okay. If I like see anywhere else, like
Yeah.
I'm driving and I'm like, oh, we could.
Yeah, send me an email or shoot me a text.
Okay.
Because I have plenty, and I'd like to get them out to people that need them.
and if
so.
you need help dropping off, let us know.
Okay.
Always
Yeah,
driving
yeah.
around town.
Yeah. You know, I'm thinking one of the larger businesses.
IPG?
Yes, thank you. What are they doing for testing? Were they?
Oh, you,
I don't know, I know they have their own
That's-
in-house contact tracer, but I don't know what their testing program looks like. But it'd be worth reaching out to them, because they've
See
been
what
so
they-
good.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, IPG. I'm thinking, or even. Yeah, that's probably our bigger one in town.
Yep.
So, okay. All right.
And then before I turn over, I realized there's one other thing just to put on your radar. Oxford Farms has reached out, and they would be really interested in working with the town on a farmers market potentially this summer at their site, getting vendors out there. She has a nice barn, so that's something that at some point I'll probably go out, see the site, and see if this is something that they'd be interested in the community, and maybe working on that.
Okay.
It isn't in the center of town, so I don't know if there would be more of a demand of a farmer's market more in the center. But I'll check out her location and maybe see if we start it there, and we can always move it if we feel like there's more demand.
Okay. All right.
And those are the updates that I have. Any questions before? No?
Nothing else.
Did we keep our 6 p.m. time?
Yes.
Starting in April?
Unless another time works better.
No, I think we
Okay.
talked about
I
it.
like
but
6, yeah.
couldn't- Okay.
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 Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
Finally.
I know. I love it.
Later.
I love it for now.
I know. Well, March 13th was like when we went out, so.
Yeah.
But, no, so the good news is, the big change, of course, in the school system, as everywhere else, is masks are now optional. And it's only a small percentage, at least in my building, and I'm sure
Yeah.
we have the littles where the parents can tell them whether to wear their mask or not. I'm sure as we get older, they're not wearing them, so. I haven't seen much of an increase in vaccination. It is I feel like it is where it is, and they haven't really budged, and there's less reason to now, too, you know. It's not gonna be the difference of masking or not masking and things like that. So, and we do, as we talked about test kits, you have to opt in. I have in my building, you know, which is 3rd, 4th, and preschool, about 40% have opted into this program. And we know we have it at least through like late April. So, and overall, I've tried to gather, because I kind of have the advantage of seeing the school numbers, that if I kind of see any trends, like if people are telling me about home testing that isn't going to be in the state. So I've been trying to include that in your reports, that if I know
Yeah, I saw
families who
that
have
down the
gone,
bottom, yeah.
you know, it's gone through families or something, that I just think it's helpful to know where is it at. And it's not, even this past week so far, we had 3 in the school system and only 6 going through official channels of being tested. So that's like, you know, nothing, which is great. And it's definitely less, I mean, it definitely came down this time last year, but not this fast. I mean, it wasn't until May that we were seeing like single digits. So, so that's exciting.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anything else right now.
Okay.
Did you say you have until through
Well,
mid-April?
so far, I mean, I don't know if they'll extend it or not, but that's supposedly what DESI has said, that this program is through, I think, I don't know what, April 24th. And we give out test kits every 2 weeks. So, and they get a box with 2 kits in them, so. The idea is for them to test on Sunday nights. I know some people are doing it, and some people probably hold on to them, which in some ways makes more sense, that if you're symptomatic. I'm not sure how much we gain by just doing a test once a week.
Right.
You know, it'd be nice to have a test if someone has some sort of intercurrent illness, and we can test multiple
Exactly.
days in a row, then,
Yeah.
we are seeing more colds now, I think, because the mask came off, which was to be expected. I mean,
Yeah.
this is what we usually saw in the fall when they
Yeah.
all came back together, so I think we're seeing those types of trends.
That and the GI bug will start to,
But
yeah.
it's, with Omicron, I saw more GI symptoms than I did
Yeah.
with any of the other, variants, so it's, I always tell people, don't assume anything, and if you have a test, it doesn't hurt to test.
Mhm.
And as far as the numbers that come through the town, we're still focusing on kids, especially if they're not in the school system, because I feel like we well support them, our school nurses. So sometimes I don't know if these children are homeschooled or if they're parochial schools or something, so I'll try and reach out if they're younger ages, just to make sure the family knows, like, how long they should be out, what's typically expected of them, or someone 65 and older, just to make sure they have the support systems they need and they don't have any questions,
Okay,
so.
all right. Because when was February school vacation week? 2 weeks ago?
We came
Not
back
last week.
last Monday
We came
without
back
masks.
last
So
Monday,
we've been back full week,
a full week.
without masks.
Okay, fingers crossed.
No, I know.
Yeah,
It's
like,
exciting. I get
That's,
excited
it's still
every
good
day.
at 7 days, like,
Yes.
I usually give it 2 weeks, I'll give it, like, yeah, it's exactly what I was like, 14 days, let's see where we head from there, but,
And the weather will determine, the more we can get them out and not on
Right,
top of each other
exactly.
also helps.
yeah,
It's true.
yep,
Crack a
So,
window.
Yes,
yep,
so,
okay. All right,
so,
so that's good, I love these short and sweet updates now.
yes, we will take them, right? So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Also, if you feel as though there's any areas in town, just like we were talking about, that you think could benefit from testing kits,
Okay,
just reach out to
I'll let
Rika
you
and
know.
we'll
I
see.
know
We
the
were just
good-
saying, like, with the, if somebody's sick and they're not sure and they're only having that test like once a week on a Sunday and they don't have access to another test, give us a call.
No, I know,
We know.
that, and I do think, because all the churches are also involved with the food pantry, so I think it would be nice, even if they don't want to take them themselves, for them to be able to say they're at the community center. I just think for them to have that knowledge, I think that's a great central location. And, yeah, no, and, I mean, we still periodically get messages from preschools and, because the preschools are in a tough position, because most of the kids are, young, or
Right.
especially the daycares. The daycares haven't masked all along, because most of them were 2 and under. I mean, they had the few handful of kids. But the preschools are kind of on the fence, like, okay, my kids aren't necessarily, they're not necessarily under, some are under 5, so they're not vaccinated, so we're, but they're working through it, and the good news is there hasn't been a major spike in the public school system, so I always think that bodes well for them, so.
Right.
And that's what we share with them, so.
Okay.
Those are the, like I said, there are fewer now, because I feel like either some daycares probably have herd immunity at this point, and then, and some,
I think so,
Yeah, there was a little while there that there
Oh,
were
it
a
was
lot,
tough.
yeah.
And they, and the whole thing of, how long do we shut down for? Who do we not let back? Who do we let back?
Right, right.
And they're dependent as we are, and the families being honest about, like, who's sick and who's not.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, some of them found out after the fact, 24 to 48 hours, and like, oh, surprise.
I know.
So, but yeah, no, I mean, overall, it just, everything looks great, and we'll take
Alright.
it.
Yeah, I'll take it. I think if you see a spike or any, like, the numbers are starting to head in the other direction, especially over the next, week to 10 days, just let us know and say, hey.
Well, I'll
we're-
continue to do these reports.
Right.
I'm a numbers person, so I just like, and I'm
I love the
visual.
numbers, like,
I'm
I'm
very
like-
visual, and
Yeah.
so I don't mind doing it, it gives me, but it gives me ammunition to say to either parents or something like, we're seeing this,
Right.
or we're not seeing this, or
Right.
the schools are reflecting what's going on in the community, which is great,
Right. And what's going on in the community is reflecting what's happening in the hospitals too, because our numbers are
Right.
definitely down, so. Okay.
We'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it right now, so. All right.
Well,
Any
thank you very much,
questions?
and,
Thank you.
anytime you guys can reach out to me too, if you have any questions,
All right.
so. All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion on that? You were asking about places to
Yes,
leave those test kits and stuff.
sure.
I don't know if you're leaving them at the senior center or not, but I'll
Yep.
tell you,
Mm-hmm.
the seniors are the ones that can't get the kits.
Right.
Everybody else, their insurance pays for them, ours don't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have to pay cash and then send the form in, and you only get reimbursed $10 per kit. So you don't even get the full amount back.
So the senior center got a box. So
Okay.
reach out to the director, Laura, because she has them. She's been distributing them. And also, if you know somebody that can't physically get there, like if they're homebound, I know that their driver at times has been delivering test kits.
Yeah, I just know, because I had called my insurance company checking in on it when they first said they were gonna pay for them, and immediately they said, no, they're not covering them. And then they passed something, Medicare
Right.
passed something where they'll reimburse you $9.99 per test.
Mm-hmm.
But again, people are on fixed incomes, they gotta pay for this, and then wait 6 to 8 weeks to get the money back. It makes
Right.
it hard on them, so Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
So send them our way. If you know anybody that needs it, that's an Oxford resident, we have them.
We have them. Okay. All right, great. So next on the agenda, is there anything additional around emergency preparedness?
The one thing that I just add is that I received funds from the state to go to the Nato Preparedness Summit. So I'll probably go for 2 days at the beginning of April. It looks like they have some good topics, particularly around climate change. I know Oxford, we got the municipal preparedness grant to come up with a plan, and there's a lot of funding
Okay.
around that. So I'm hoping that some of the stuff there we can apply
Okay.
to grant funds here.
Great. Awesome. All righty. Look at that. We're ahead of schedule here a little bit. So next on our agenda, we have the updated body art regulations.
Yes. So you should see them in front of you. What's highlighted in yellow are the changes that I'm proposing. They're mainly 2 sections. One is Practitioner Experience. The part in blue, I had added after they were sent to you. It's just pretty much saying that it doesn't have to be somebody specifically licensed in Massachusetts that can be the apprentice or the,
Okay.
That was going to be one of my questions to you.
yeah.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't have to be Massachusetts.
Correct.
Oh, I was thinking Connecticut is so close that maybe that would be
Right.
a state.
And it's really looking at, a lot of states have similar regulations, you
Right.
know, so as long as the background is sufficient. And then I added another section after speaking with Victorian Inc. to also allow for apprentice practitioner permit, because if we're requiring experience, we really should have the ability for a apprentice permit for them to operate under a licensed practitioner that's in good standing in the town. So as you can see, there's a difference between just body art, apprenticeship hours and times, and then specifically permanent cosmetics such as microblading, micropigmentation, permanent makeup. These regs were copied from Walpole, which received them from Boston. I did do some research about what other communities in the area require around apprenticeships, because I talked to my colleagues, it's varying. And so Webster and Dudley, I spoke with their health agent, their regulations state 2 years apprenticeship, which is equivalent to 2,400 hours. Grafton, Millbury, Northbridge, and Douglas are the same. Northborough requires 1 year, and then Worcester, Sturbridge, Southbridge, Auburn, and Uxbridge are as we had our regulations currently. So they have that model regulation that doesn't speak to apprenticeship hours.
So is that specific for, we'll get to you in a moment, I know. So is that specific, what was my question I just had for you? And is that for the apprenticeship hours or the experience hours? Because I feel like there's 2 big sections in here that are changing. One is the apprenticeship permitting,
Yep.
which is new, and the other piece is the experience and hours.
Correct.
So I
that-
find that like to be 2,
They're 2 separate
in my
things.
head, that's 2 buckets that I'm,
And they're both added, so they're
Yep.
both, our regulations prior didn't speak to any experience needed. So somebody could take these courses, have bloodborne pathogen training, first aid, CPR, have the proper infectious disease control training, all of that, and then they could come in and perform body art, any type of body art. So I wanted to add something so that we know the people that are coming in have experience, that they have worked under somebody that's been licensed and they've been properly trained in proper body art protocol and how to do it. And so those communities, most communities don't speak to an apprentice permit. So most communities, you have to come in to get a practitioner permit. You have to have the experience. And which was brought up to me is, well, how are you going to get the experience if you don't have an apprentice program?
Okay.
So that's why I took from Mansfield what they had, so that we could have an option for an apprentice permit, so that people can gain experience to get that practitioner permit.
okay. So I had a couple of questions as I was going through it. So one of the statements, it says, 200 hours of apprenticeship, including 30 hours, I think this was for the cosmetic,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Including.
What page are you on?
It's at 15.
15, sorry.
Yeah, including
It's at the
30
bottom.
hours observing procedures and 50 completed supervised procedures. My question for that, and this is, I'm putting on a different hat here too, is who's supervising these? So I guess what I don't understand is, can anybody who does body art supervise cosmetic, or is it somebody who specializes in cosmetic that has to supervise them? Do you see what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I almost think of them as two specialties, even though they're essentially doing the same process.
Yep.
The training's different. So that was my question, you know.
So it would have to be somebody licensed.
So it doesn't matter who it is, whether they have experience in cosmetic or not.
So it should, so you're correct, the verbiage maybe should be changed a little bit, because like in other communities it has to be someone in the area that they practice in, right? So if it's microblading, it has to be someone that does microblading. If it's
Okay.
tattooing, it has to be someone that does tattooing.
So I would like to see something
Yep.
like that in there, because for when I read it, it was vague and I was like, oh, okay, so, you know, any body art practitioner can oversee someone who's doing cosmetic, but they don't have any training in cosmetic. So how are they gonna know and be able to support them and supervise them? So that was one question that I had around that. The other question I had was around the apprentice license,
Yep.
or permitting piece of it. So there was thing that said full-time. Where was it? Apprenticeship period shall be, it's on page 16, number 5, shall be a minimum of 1 year full-time under immediate. Are we defining what full-time is? Because full-time is very different for many different people. Is that 40 hours? Is that 32? Is that 28? Is that how many hours? I would rather have an hour piece on there than a full-time.
And I think it's normally about 1,200, because the 2 years is generally 2,400 hours. So it'd be 1,200 hours.
I think it said somewhere 1,800 hours was it.
I think you're actually right, but it's in the earlier section, right?
Yeah, it's on page 15 under the practitioner
Yeah.
experience, but not underneath the
So you can keep it the same.
apprentice. So we can either keep it the same or we can define what full-time is for the purpose of this document, however.
Or you can change, right, we can just decide which one we would want, the 1,800 or the 1,200 hours.
Yep. Okay. All right.
So the
Go
full-time
ahead.
that you were looking at was under the apprentice,
It was under the apprentice permitting.
and then full-time.
So the apprentice period shall be a minimum of 1 year, full-time, under immediate and direct supervision. So that's where I wasn't sure. I'm like, define what full-time is. You know, most people nowadays, like 30 hours is full-time. So I would rather see an hour there than just
Yep.
full-time. I think it could be interpreted differently.
I'll just copy it, from the other one, 1 year full-time employment, and then put the hours.
Okay. Dave, do you have any other questions?
I do. 315, item 3. Will accept experience from another country?
So,
How do we validate that?
So a lot of, and I'm sure the ladies here can attest to it, a lot of microbladers, they will actually get their training in a foreign country, Ukraine, Russia, those are big locations. They actually tend to be on the forefront of these items. So that would be something we would just need some sort of documentation of what that experience consisted of, what their training covers, to make sure it's equivalent.
Okay, so you're talking about formal training, where they get some kind of certificate, or, because this is just looking for a year's worth of experience.
No, it says license. Copy with
Okay.
license.
Yeah.
All right, you're right, I missed that part. Okay, I accept that. In item 4, it says, license to practice in another state that's approved by the department. And our definition for department is the Department of Public Health?
Right, so that's just the, because I added that section, so it really should be elsewhere in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that is approved by the department or licensed by, or a licensed body art practitioner from another state. So that should just be moved, just because I had added that section so that it could be from somebody from another state.
So in addition to the local permit, they need a license from the state.
So the state doesn't license it, but,
That's why I'm saying approved by the department.
well, we are, the Board of Health, the locals, we have the authority from the state.
Okay. So
Because I do believe
we're
we
the
use that
department.
department is
We
used
do.
throughout the regulations already.
Okay. Page 16A, 11A. It says the training requirements in 10F. Do we mean F and E, or do we mean E? The training requirements are in E. Practitioner training.
Yep, E and F.
Okay, so that should be E and F.
Yep.
That's what I figured. And for the documentation, it seems a little soft until the supervising practitioner thinks that the person is ready. I was thinking that maybe a log of patients and hours would be appropriate, so that, you know, during an inspection, you could see that it's actually being kept.
Yep.
Yeah, and the log could include the client, the name, the date, the procedure performed, stuff like that.
I guess my other question off that, Dave, and this is where I may ask some of your experience as well, is what have other apprenticeship programs do? Like, what, do they log hours? How, can you?
I came here, excuse me, I came here a few years back when I first brought an apprentice, had a young lady come in and become an apprentice under me. They had no apprenticeship work whatsoever. What I did and what I put forward to them before is that she is to be with me at the shop
Yep.
from 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. until 8 p.m. when I close. In that process, she learns, she has to have the required CPR, first aid, bloodborne pathogens, and then I was pushing for the skin anatomy for the tattoo artist. I made sure that was all in there. And then I explained to them that for the first 6 months to a year for a tattoo apprenticeship, she will not be handling machines anyways. She will not be handling skin whatsoever. She'll be learning how to run the machines, work with the machines, rebuild the machines, that type of stuff first. Sterilization, at that time they didn't have as many disposable things as we have now, so she had to learn how to run, clean, and work with the autoclaves. Same thing with our ultrasonic machines and the different chemicals we have in the back, whether it be the maticides or something as simple as bleach, that type of stuff, what we have back there, the green soaps, all that type of stuff. But we pushed for those hours and things like that. I required a certain amount of hours with them. I went off a lot of the Quincy Board of Health type stuff. I never had a formal apprenticeship myself, but I've been tattooing almost 25 years now. So trying to learn the guidelines of what they were asking for other states at times, there was very vague, very, very vague. Even Connecticut, if I being the owner of the shop, if I had bloodborne pathogens, you could walk in the door and become a tattoo artist and be tattooing the next day.
Right.
So I make sure that I held my artists to a higher standard. I think that's probably why we got the awards we did last year with being best in Central Mass. So there's a lot of stipulations that follow that I'm not gonna sit here and break them all down for you, but I can sit with you and actually show you what I do in my apprentices if you want to. But there's a lot of things that we break down with them from years of training for medical treatment wise. Something as simple as somebody passing out. I require that some of my my other two artists take a concussion course, you know, just from them hitting their head on the floor.
Yep.
Stuff like I've been a baseball coach for years and things like that too. So understanding any type of medical background they could have, I appreciate. The problem I have is there's not enough practitioners out there to give the time into these people that they need. A lot of these people are giving the courses, things like that, but they're not able to sit and give them the hours on each client unless you're working in a shop. You can't get an apprenticeship somewhere without living that life in that place. And that's the only, hard thing is like single mothers, single fathers, that type of stuff. They're not gonna have the time to sit there and do every one of those distances of hours and things like that. But if they're willing to put in the effort and learn the medical procedures and then learn the procedures of how they have to be done, I think that's where the difference is that someone who's willing to be there and someone who's just there for the hours. You know, I can sit through every class you want and learn nothing, you know? And then you have these other people who actually want to do it, who it's a lifestyle for them. With tattoos, for me, I eat, breathe, and sleep tattoos. You know, there's not a single day I have off, and it's horrible,
Yep.
but that's what I chose. That's what I love to do.
Right.
So, I mean, I've seen a lot of, almost, how to say it, but half-ass artists out there, who guys who just don't care, and they're hurting people. So, I mean, I understand where a lot of this is coming from, but I think that some of the stipulations on hours or number of clients, I think that comes with experience over time. I don't think that there's not I've personally called around different teachers and things like that. They're not willing, and these are accredited schools, they're not willing to put in another 25 to 50 clients in their class. They said there's not enough teachers to do it, there's not enough people to do that. They make sure that their students are brought up to a standard where they need to be to go on and work in a shop. And again, besides that, I mean, you get a mechanic, you teach him how to do something, and the only way he's going to learn is by doing it over and over and over again, whether it be under another mechanic or in a shop learning to do it. You know, and I'm not saying trial error or anything like that, but that's the only way you get better at things.
Right.
I just think it's really hard to get that many hours in without being in a physical shop.
Okay, so if I can ask, so
That's what the intent here is, that
I think there's two. So I think there's two. I think there's two buckets. I want to break it down to make sure that we address the two issues. So one is the fact of the apprenticeship permitting, and then the other piece is talking about the extra added element in here about practitioner experience. So I want to break that down. So if you guys don't mind, so if you guys can just introduce yourself to us, just so that we're aware, and then we'll have this dialogue. Does that work? Okay. What's your name?
I'm Jason Gusky. I'm part owner of Victorian Ink.
Okay.
I've been a tattoo artist for almost 25 years now.
Okay.
And I'm George Gusky, I'm the other owner of Victorian Ink.
Okay. So I think at this time I'm going to have you guys come on up to the big table. It'll also make it easier for recording. Because what you have to say is important for what we are proposing. So I think if you guys don't mind, let's start first with talking about, I'm gonna skip over the practitioner experience right now and talk about the application for body art apprentice practitioner permitting. Now, do you guys have a copy of the revised draft regulations?
I'm gonna assume this is revised, this is the one that
Yes, it looks
you sent me?
highlighted.
Yeah, it's highlighted, bunch of highlighted stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this would be page 16, number 11, so it goes into 16 and page 17. So this is, I just want to focus talking about the apprentice practitioner permitting piece first. So
This is just for an apprentice?
just for the apprentice permitting. I want to break it down, so, because I think we're getting confused by the experience hours and the permitting, and I just want to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, apprentice practitioner permitting. So, I guess I'll open the floor to you guys. What questions, comments, as it is written, do you feel that this is appropriate if somebody were to come in and say, I want to do an apprenticeship here at Victorian Ink with so-and-so, they'll come through, get their apprentice permit.
I'm really harsh on people that come through for that, so.
Read over that. and
So
I
this
can-
is probably lighter than what you're
My
used to.
former apprentice, I horrible to say, but I made her cry about 35 billion times.
Okay.
I sent her away 4 times before she came back and actually got an apprenticeship with me. So,
And that's the type of person I'd like to put ink on my body,
and then-
personally,
and the two
so
girls-
just
the two girls-
throwing that out there.
Well, just saying, the two girls that I have now, one of them worked under me for 2 years. I gave her license. She has now followed every guidelines you guys have asked for and everything else. She's now become an award-winning artist with me. The other artist that I have here is being held to very high standards. She's actually traveling. She just came back from Maryland and a few other places. She is now an award-winning artist. And both of them have worked with me for 4 years. 2 years is a full-blown apprenticeship, where they did not tattoo any clients or anything like that unless I was standing over them.
Just want to jump in on that, because you keep saying 2 years and you guys are saying full-time. That's not the proper terminology. I think what you need to do is say they need to have so many hours of
Well,
training.
she said that earlier.
Yeah, that's,
And
yeah.
the reason I say that is a lot of artists do not work full-time. We try to make them there full-time, but they
Right.
can't always do it. We had one gentleman that was in there.
Again,
He
single
wouldn't-
father.
He was a single father. He didn't come in until like 4
5
o'clock
o'clock.
in the afternoon, and he was only there a couple hours. So it's gonna take him a lot longer to train.
Right.
But these people can't work a full-time doing
Job.
this and work a full-time job for
Agreed.
2 years.
And so it's going to be, what we discussed is 1,800 hours. Is what we would consider to be the amount of 1 year
And-
full-time. So then you could spread that out as what fits your schedule.
Maybe we could just change the wording in number 5 to say a minimum of 1,800 hours, period. I think the 1 year is confusing.
Yeah, and get
And
rid of the
full-time
1 year and
also.
just say, so basically the apprenticeship period will be a minimum of 1,800 hours under immediate and direct supervision. Make it clear and simple.
The only question I wanna have on that is, that's if they are doing an apprenticeship.
Correct.
What happens if this person comes in and they went to school for this?
No,
Because
we're,
they do have tattoo schools.
okay,
Okay, so it's always been an either-or thing. You go to
Okay.
school, and whatever the schooling, has for their regulations.
Apprenticeships are old school.
Correct.
Easy as that. Apprenticeships are considered old school. It's you find an artist that you like their style, you click with their personality, that type of stuff, and you work with them and to learn. Otherwise, they have tattoo schools in Texas, New Hampshire. There's a few other ones. They have actual tattoo schools. You go down there and you're only there for 2 months, 3 months, if max.
If that.
If that, yeah. And they teach you the proper procedures of tattooing. Do I feel that all their standards are up to where they need to be? I don't know. I never went to the school.
right.
I followed what they've done. I've talked to people who've come out of those schools, and again, it's all on that person, because it's a person by person experience. Because I've had other people that come in, I'm like, wow, this guy's a moron. I've had other ones come in where I'm just like, wow, they're very knowledgeable in what they're doing. They paid attention. They know what's going on, and they learn from somebody who knows what they're doing.
Okay.
So I think it comes a lot from the background too of what training they've had, what school they went to, what teacher they had, things like
Okay.
that.
That's a good point, but I think that goes back to the experience, just that section on
Right.
page 14, but let's just stick with they're doing an apprenticeship.
Right.
Right.
So this is really for someone who has a desire to want to do an apprenticeship, who says, I want to come here, I want to learn under you, right? Or you, and say, I'm going to apply to Oxford for an apprenticeship permit. So I think,
But just also to add, like, and I know we're trying to separate, but the reason to put this in is so that you can meet the experience requirements, right?
There, yeah.
So
This
that's how
gives you
they
their
are.
experience.
Right, exactly.
Tradespeople go to school and then they become apprentices.
right,
So
for the most part.
I was gonna say not always, but yeah.
Right, that's why I said for the most part. So, okay, so if somebody wanted to come in and do an apprenticeship, if we change number 5 to 1,800 hours, is there anything else that you feel in this section that we need to address for somebody who wants to come in for a permit for a body art apprentice?
I think my only concern is going to be with the cosmetics, because of the fact that they're not going to get an apprenticeship like that.
No.
No salon's going to pick them up for an apprenticeship like that.
Well, not only the cosmetics, but also the tattoo artists as well. So you're requiring a number of actual procedures. And that's kind of hard to say, in most towns, because I made a lot of phone calls too and spoke with several of the Board of Health, and I wanted to just a comment on Dudley. You said you spoke with somebody over there. Dudley does not have a tattoo artist, and we were told they would never have one in there. We applied there and they shut us down. So whatever regulations they have are gonna be regulations that Tom had.
Yeah, and the regulations are gonna be the same as Webster because it's the same health agent as Webster Dudley.
Now.
Like Webster
it
Dudley,
wasn't
yeah, they,
before.
currently, it's the same health
Okay,
agent.
so that's something new. Webster's the only town around here that requires an apprentice application, because I called several of them as well. I agree we should have an apprentice one. We've said this before. People come in, you hand them their license.
Right.
That's wrong. We
I held
the
their
license.
licenses.
We wouldn't even give it to
for
them.
4 years, for 2
Right, you
years.
know? Yeah.
I wouldn't allow my apprentices to have their license. And as it is, bottom line is if they leave my shop and go on to another shop, I own that license. You can
We
go
don't give it
apply
to
in
them
another
because,
town. You don't get a
because they
license.
haven't completed the hours.
You
So
know?
you go figure out how you're gonna get it, because we're not gonna give you ours. You know, I mean, if they want something saying, oh, well, they got, you know,
The
500 hours in so
tattooing
far,
and
it's fine.
cosmetic
But
community is actually a very tight-knit community. I'm friends with almost every shop around here. So they don't really bounce around much. And I was speaking with another one who's very credible shop in Worcester, who is very, very well known for his career. Apprenticing wise, I don't know that I think it's a hard situation with hours or procedures, I should say, for certain stipulations. I think that maybe there's something you guys should have to do to have an accredited artist and feel what they feel that client may need. Because I may have a client that needs 200 more hours than I think this one does. You know,
Exactly.
this person may walk in, get it right off the bat, understand what I'm saying, be very cleanly, and just follow those guidelines nonstop of where I need to be, and they may just have a knack for it, and they do a very good job with it. And I could say that, hey, listen, I understand you need a certain amount of hours. Here's your guidelines of what you should have, but you're good to go. But other people, I'm looking at them and say, listen, you're not ready yet, man. I have friends of mine from Ware who has an apprentice, and his apprentice has been with him for 6 years, and he still doesn't feel his kid's up to par yet.
Right.
We've
But
had,
by guidelines, he could be a licensed artist tomorrow.
So this says there is no maximum amount of time for the apprenticeship. The apprentice's approved sponsored trainer will be responsible for determining. So 1,800 is the minimum. So if you
Right,
feel
I
like
understand
more
that,
is
but
needed,
No, I
or if
think,
you
I
feel
feel
like
that less should be
I think it should be
needed.
less.
To be honest with you, I feel less should be needed.
Right.
Only because of the fact that some of these people, unless they're making this a full-time career or a lifestyle like I do, they're not gonna have that. It's gonna take them 5 years to get licensed.
Yeah.
You know, you got a single mom out there who's like, hey, I could work at a salon 2 days a week and be doing microblading and make some money and take care of my kids. And it's gonna take them 5 years to get licensed to do that.
Yeah, if you take 1,800 hours and you divide it through 52 weeks, it's 35 hours a week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they can't do
and-
that. Parents can't do that. Single parents can't do that.
Most towns don't have a requirement as far as the hours go. Let me rephrase that. Most towns in this area do not. Southbridge, Douglas, Uxbridge, they don't have anything.
Brookfield, none
Okay,
of them.
Brookfield, they don't have anything. I spoke with several of these towns. Worcester doesn't have any requirements whatsoever for it. Once you get out to Boston, Cambridge, some of those towns out there, they do. Most of them are around 12. I know that I don't know if it's the state has no regulations to begin with, but somewhere I saw that somebody was requiring 18. It may have been Boston or Cambridge, I'm not sure. But like I said, in speaking to most of them, the biggest problem that the towns have is how do we prove it? You know, so I think it has to fall back. I mean, first of all, if your artist that's apprenticing them is not up to where they should be, they shouldn't be apprenticing to begin with. So I think you have to kind of, you know, believe in what this person is saying. Like I said, we're there almost 7 years now. He's been doing this for 25 years. We've had, like, our other artists that were there. Now it's a little bit different, but a little while back, one of them wanted to bring in an apprentice, and he said, absolutely not. You're not even considered, you know, anywhere near ready to be apprenticing somebody, you know? Today's a little bit different than at that time, but, I don't know, like I said, I
Problem
think
is, for us, is that we have to have something.
you have to have
It's not
something, I agree.
arbitrary.
Right.
And I looked at a
It's
lot of
clear
these,
cut.
and I gotta tell you, there's nothing. You know, I spoke with the.
So
with
we
the
understand
director.
where you're coming from, where you want to put these
Yeah,
guidelines in effect.
100%.
We understand.
Right.
I'm
I'm on
not
board with
going
you.
against it. I just
Right.
think it's too much.
Right, and that's why we want to work with you
Right,
to
right.
figure out, and so I think the other piece that we have to think about too is right now, you're the only body art
In town.
in town.
Right.
So, from what it sounds like in speaking to you, You're going above and beyond. You're following the regulations. You're
and I
making
agree.
sure that
That's us,
people
that's
are.
everybody else.
That is you guys.
The
I'm just.
the first time I came here, and
Throwing this out
I handed you guys my paperwork. I don't remember what was his
I
name I
think-
spoke to. There was another gentleman I spoke to that was here before, and I gave him my paperwork, and he goes, "What is all this?" And I said, "You already have a shop in town. Like, how are you going to ask me what is this?"
Yeah.
And he just kind of
That
looked
was
at
Tom.
me. Yeah, he kind
Tom.
of looked at me, and he was like, "I didn't see any of this before." And I'm like, "Well, this is what
I
we
don't-
follow. So
Yeah. And we-
let me help you with that."
So we as a Board of Health know what we need from you in order to issue a permit. So, and when we sign them, we look at every single bit of
Right.
paperwork. We actually scrutinize it, and look at that. So, but I think what the purpose of these regulations is to make sure that not only you guys, but
Right.
any other new establishment that comes into town isn't gonna just.
Right, and I
I
don't
agree.
want anybody else to come in here and just walk in and get a license.
That's why I was very happy when you said, apprentice license. Nobody has.
That's a big deal. But again,
It is.
my biggest concern, I just think, is the hours wise.
Right.
For somebody to put in those kind of hours, they're not going to be able to do it. It's not going to happen, and no teacher is going to put in those hours with a child, with a student like that.
Oh, absolutely not. If they go to school, it should be totally different than the
Right.
apprenticeship.
Now, if somebody came to me for an apprenticeship, me owning the shop, and they want to work for me as an apprentice, that's one stipulation. If they go to a school where they're going to class 4 hours a day or 3 hours a day for so many weeks or whatever it may be, where they're just going in to learn this class, that should be held to a different standard.
Exactly.
Because it's not just somebody in my shop while I'm tattooing, learning, talking with me, things like that, like being in the field of a plumber or a contractor or anything like that. You're in the field, your hands on, you're learning things. That takes a little bit longer, I feel, than being in a set classroom where you're sitting and that's all you're focusing on. There's nothing else going on in here. You're not learning with clients, you're not dealing with a client, you're not hands on, you're right there. And then they have the clients come through right there, and you have the practitioner standing over you right there for that allotted period of time. With being in a shop establishment, there's going to be times where that apprentice is going to be in a back room scrubbing tubes and things like that, and I'm going to come back in there and check on him. And then I'm going to go back there and stand over him. And there's other times where I'm going to stand there and be like, okay, well, I got to see if he's going to screw up or not. I have to let them have a little bit of freedom.
Right.
You can't, because you're going to do, everybody here is going to do something one way until somebody else isn't standing there. And then you're going to be like, oh, well, I can do it this way, and this way might work better for me, or, there's different styles, different things, and that's how we learn more over these years. That's how we come across these things. So I just think that's my only concern out of this whole situation. Should they have more medical background, things like that? Yes, and I fully agree with that. But the amount of time doing the practitioner is it's going to kill anybody out there in this business trying to get into it.
So we're looking at basically number 5 and 6 that
Yeah.
we need to
Yeah.
have a.
But maybe there's a
bigger
stipulation.
conversation about.
Maybe there's a stipulation where, again, if they went to school or if you just worked in a salon learning from somebody in a salon.
But see, to me, I view that as that can be counted towards your hours, right?
No,
Because-
yes, that's why I said if you're in a salon, that's one thing.
Right.
If you're in a salon, that's one thing you count towards your hours. But being in a school, I think that should be, if you come from a credible school or accredited
should be
school,
sufficient.
it should be, you've been licensed through
But
them.
but you're really getting off, because that wouldn't have anything to do with the apprentice.
Yes,
So-
it does.
Well, if they go to school, they wouldn't be an apprentice. They would demand a
They're
license.
still staying, it's considered an
So
apprenticeship.
if they're coming through, so if I'm coming through and I apply for apprentice, so I go to you and I want to get into this, right? I don't, but, and I come in, so.
You need a lot of strange people.
No, it's all good. And so I say, you're like, okay, I'll take you on. That's fine. You're gonna go to the town. You're gonna complete the paperwork for an apprenticeship permit. That's up to me, right? So I can do that if I want to fill out the permit. Now, what you're saying is that the 1,800 hours that is basically stating this is the period of time for an apprenticeship permit. Once you hit 1801, then they can come through and apply for a regular permit. Is that what we're trying to say, Rika, right?
If their direct supervisor signs off, right? Because as you were
Yeah,
saying, some
correct,
might
if he
need
signs off.
longer.
Right.
Because, like I said, again, first of all, we were saying we felt the 1,800 was too much. I'd like to see that back down to about 1,000. The towns that I checked with, 800 to 1,200, so somewhere in the middle down there, I would be good with. But like you just said, this would be something for an apprentice. If they've gone to school, that's a separate ballgame.
Right.
If this is for an apprentice, somebody that's never done this before, didn't go to school for it, any of that type of stuff. And the artist that they're training under would have to sign
The
off
accredited
before you
artist.
give them.
So those
Yeah, and
hours are the minimum. and then
Correct.
they would have to get the sign off. So right now, the minimum is 1,800, but if their supervisor feels they need more hours, it would be longer. So not only would you need the minimum number of hours, but you'd also need the sign off.
If it didn't say hours and it said a year or 2 years, that'd be more
No.
reasonable.
That makes it
No.
even harder.
That makes it
Without,
harder.
without
That makes it
saying
harder.
full-time.
Yeah.
No,
Because
it makes it
that's-
hard.
agree.
Without
Because-
saying
Go
full-time.
ahead.
Well, it's making it harder because of the fact that, again, we have people that come in, again, my former apprentice, I had come in 5 o'clock at night, 4 o'clock at night, he'd only be there for 3-4 hours. So a year's time for someone who's there 3-4 hours a day, or a year's time for I make them be there 8 or 9 hours a day.
Yeah, you get two
Right,
different.
I'm saying, if we were to put aside the requirement for a certain number of hours and just make it a duration.
Right, but that's what he just said. Somebody may come in and only be
Hold
there
on,
a couple
I
hours a
understand where you're
day
coming from.
versus 8 hours a
I'm
day.
not
saying
I'm not disagreeing with the hours.
So you
What I'm
said
saying
no
is just
full-
bring them back a little bit, that's all. I think there should be a number of hours there because of the fact of
Right.
situations where people can't be there all the time.
Okay.
So if you just say a blanket year, you're gonna have people that come in who, as at the shop 1 day a week for a year. And they're gonna
Right,
get
that's
licensed.
what I'm saying,
And
and
again,
that's
they
not
would
good.
need the supervisor sign off. I think,
Yeah,
you're
I mean,
coming
you have
from
the,
a
so
year.
this is intended to be a minimum requirement.
Right, and that's why I said, I think,
So,
just
I
if the
mean,
hours came back a little
You
bit.
can't get the
It'd be fine.
permit without a sponsor
Right, right.
who's licensed, and, I think that's all we're trying to do here is.
No,
set a
everything else seems
minimum
good,
bar.
I just, that's my only opinion is that I would bring back the hours a little bit. As for, like, the.
Eliminate the time frame. You know, just
Right,
the
so
hours.
we-
You have to put in so
eliminate
many
the
hours.
Timeframe, we said 1,800 hours, but that, it does seem like it puts
Strain
single
on them.
parents,
Yeah.
So
strain
if
on
we-
single parents, and-
so-
and people who aren't gonna do it full-time, so
Right.
if it were, I don't know,
Yeah,
1,000 hours, 1,200 hours
Well, so
as a
the other
minimum.
thing that I'm thinking of too,
That's-
so I'm gonna put my educator hat on. So I understand it takes some people less time and some people more time. Totally understand it. We use the word competency versus proficiency, right?
Yes.
So I'm a nurse educator, so I got it, right? So I'm not opposed to the fact of decreasing the hours. My thing is that I want to make sure that there's strong language in number 5, which it's kind of there, but I think we need to beef it up a little bit, where it basically says that these are your minimum number of hours, but that if that 800 hours, let's say I could do 800,
Yep.
right? And you're like, no, you still need like 1,000, you're bad,
Right.
right?
Oh, definitely.
So, right, so I want there to be some clear documentation that says, I met the 800, but I'm not ready yet for a permit. Do you see what I'm?
Yeah, but how do you do that,
And it's
okay?
going off-
But it should be
what she's-
signed
what it's right
off
here is
by
by
the
sponsor, trainer
apprentice
will be responsible
sponsor.
for determining the proficiency.
Okay,
Okay.
but I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, because you've been doing this for a while, and he's gonna be a stickler when somebody comes into training.
Yep.
But I do know, and I'm not gonna mention names or anything else, other shops, that they come in that door and you're good.
Okay, but
How
here's,
are you gonna
That was
possibly
kind of my
control
point
that?
about the
okay,
log
we
book.
can't control, but here's the
There's
thing
actually
is,
some duration of,
But again, you know how easy it is for me to
Training.
write up a logbook?
okay, so,
This is my
Nope.
concern, it's
I know,
it's a
it-
reputable artist, and that's the hard part.
okay, I just want to reel us back in here, because we've got a lot of and this is great conversation, right? So I just want to try to get somewhere and not go around and around in a circle. So if you're absolutely right. But if an apprenticeship sponsor is signing off on them, there's the liability right there.
Okay.
Okay? We cannot go around because our experience is not in body art. I can't go and say, you're doing your job wrong.
Right.
I have no idea. Just like you can't tell me that I'm doing my job wrong because you can't, right?
And that's what I got from everybody I talked to.
So,
You know.
so if we were to decrease the hours and make sure that we have some sort of proper documentation for a sign-off by the sponsor that says they are cleared for a permit in town with a signature, then the ownership goes on the owner of the shop,
I was gonna
who
say, I think
is
the
your
I think
sponsor.
the guidelines for the sponsor should be a little bit stricter than the guidelines for the apprentice. That's where my concern comes in.
Okay.
Like you need to know that this sponsor is doing what he's supposed to be
So
doing.
then you're looking more at like C number 1, that they should have, that should maybe specifically say they have a certain number of years of experience
Yes.
to
Definitely.
be the
Yes,
supervisor.
absolutely.
All right, we could
Definitely.
do that. What are you thinking for, because you guys, you live and
Apprenticeship
breathe
wise,
this.
I believe at least 3 to 4 years. That you cannot pick up an apprentice for at least 3 to 4 years.
If you think about it, the person that's apprenticing is going to apprentice it could be a year or two before they're done. And now they're gonna jump right into it and immediately start training somebody?
Or from phrase that they should see, that's where the problem comes in. They should have at least 3 to 4 years as a licensed practitioner, because,
Correct.
because not an apprenticeship license, obviously, because those get turned into years of working, you know what I'm saying?
Experience, 5 years is where people really become proficient in what they do.
Right.
They become experts. So I would put 5 years there before you can start.
And that's
yeah.
for somebody to be written off for, yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with that,
understand.
that's
I
fine.
can accept that, if that's what you wanna go
To be
with.
teaching
I just-
somebody,
To be
yes.
teaching
Be
somebody.
teaching somebody,
Yeah,
Correct.
well, okay.
I feel that's
I
a
just
valid
think that's a
point.
little bit much, but I think it's, and you've been doing this more than I, so, yeah, I'm not gonna argue that.
I don't know, but
So it's somewhere between 3 and 5 years.
yes, and
Yeah,
I fully
it-
agree with that, that works.
That's what, because that's what I said, 3 to 4 years, because, and I understand where you're coming from. My only concern right now is the amount of people that are out there that wanna do this. We're having trouble getting people, and we're looking at apprentices, and if we start going out to 5 years for somebody to train, I mean, we're okay, because we've got him, but other shops, they're not gonna have it. They're just not gonna have it. There aren't that many people out there. Everybody, I'm on several websites right now, because we're looking to bring in more artists. Everybody
Looking
is
for
looking
apprenticeships,
for
yeah.
apprenticeships. They can't get the people in.
Okay.
And right now, tattooing has become, more and more
Such
popular.
a high demand, yeah.
It's a very high demand
Problem
right
is,
now, so.
we don't have any way of gauging the profession,
We don't.
proficiency of the teacher.
We don't.
Right.
Right.
Now, obviously, you have long tenure,
Yep.
award-winning artist, and that speaks very well for you and for your apprentices, but in my experience, and I've trained a lot
Yeah,
of
it-
people
Okay.
and had a lot of people come through my
You choose
organization.
5, I won't
Reviews.
argue it, I guess,
Alright,
because I
so
agree, it's
we-
gotta be a certain amount of
So
time.
that is something, I just kind of made note of that. That is something that we'll have a discussion about, whether it's the 3 to 4 or 5.
And just to add, I also still would want to keep the 1 year in the town of Oxford, because we would want to know that that person because I don't want someone who comes in who
Right.
has 5 years experience, but they then
And-
end up having a bunch of violations.
What happens, you have another shop comes in, somebody else comes in and opens a shop, and he wants to apprentice somebody, he's only been in town 6 months. He could've been tattooing for 30 years someplace, and you're not gonna accept that?
No.
Yeah,
Because,
see, I
like-
got it, that's the one I
Because
got
like
an
she
issue
said,
with.
we want to make sure that, they don't have any complaints in the
So
town,
what
any
happens if you have somebody who already has an
violations.
apprentice
Hmm?
that comes into town?
Can't apprentice now?
What did you say, sorry?
So I have a friend of mine right now who was working for me, had an apprentice because he's been tattooing just as long as I have. He had an apprentice in my shop with me, got the chance to open his own shop, moved to another town, opened his shop. Now, if he moved to this other town, or say they were coming from the other town to here, he's already got a guy that's been apprenticing underneath him for a year.
They wouldn't get a permit in Oxford.
So he would lose his apprentice. So now this gentleman put a year into his time, and now he has to lose out on that because of the fact that you guys aren't allowing him to
See,
apprentice,
I
even though
can
he has
accept-
the experience.
I could accept
deterrent.
Massachusetts.
Can we just have one person talking at a time?
Sure,
Sorry,
sorry.
I just want to make sure.
It's a deterrent for sure, but it's almost like on purpose.
I think that hurts the industry.
It does.
To be honest with you.
It may, and like you were saying, there's, we want people to have apprenticeships, so we're trying to make it, as easy as we can for them without, while making it safe for the clients. So,
And I understand that, but I feel that if an artist, so you're gonna tell a contractor who's been contracting for how many years, out of town, out of state, that if they come to this town and open their business here, they can't have an apprentice there?
after 1 year.
But you know how bad that affects his business? He's got
I'm
5
willing,
other
I'm willing to
employees.
talk about it. I mean, these are from the state, and these are kind of what we're talking about. I think that it says it because we want to make sure that they're not fly-by-night, like Rika was saying, that they're not just coming into town, picking up an apprenticeship, and then leaving the town. What would be the
I'm gonna be
purpose
honest
of
with you,
that?
any tattoo
Who does that
artist-
benefit?
Any tattoo artist who's been tattooing over 5 years and can prove that he's been tattooing in a legal shop for over 5 years is not gonna be a fly-by-night.
And I also
Fair.
do want to add that all regulations have written in them a variance request, right?
Right.
So they can always come in front of
And
the
be
board
questioned.
and request the variance from those regulations. And they can come with letters of recommendation from their other health departments they can show. So they could always ask for a variance from that 1 year. That is always an option.
No.
Can we make sure that that is clear in here?
Yep.
And because, I'm just listening to everything and I'm trying to just try to be in the shoes. I think you're right.
I don't want to make
think
it harder.
Exactly. There are a couple things here that I'm hearing. if I have an apprentice already with me and I just want to open up shop and I'm going to bring my apprentice with me, I mean, I don't see a problem with that as long as there is some sort of clear documentation from their previous municipality that says that they have no complaints
Right.
or
Violations,
or
right.
violations against them.
And I
So,
fully agree with that. That's
what
fine.
we could do is add language in there where they have 1 year in Oxford. If the time frame is less than 1 year, they need proper documentation from their previous municipality that says that they have no complaint, whatever our language is, no violations or validated complaints.
Fair, yeah.
That would mitigate the issue, and then we would be able to do that.
There's gonna be a little bit
Does that work?
Makes
Yeah,
a big
that
difference.
makes more sense.
Okay, all right,
because-
no, and this is why we talk about it,
I'm
but,
just saying, we're the only
don't know
ones
the
here, so
issues.
don't
Right.
let anybody come in if, you know.
and we wanna work with you, we're not trying to make it difficult, but, you know, and I know that people think we probably are, but, you know, we wanna make sure that if we have other establishments that wanna come in, that they're just as safe as you guys are right now, right? You're good, so.
I agree, I agree.
We don't get violations from you, we don't get complaints from you guys, and I would love to keep it that way with
Me
all
too.
of the other establishments that wanna come in town too. So, but we also don't wanna put the strain, cause we understand what your industry is
Right.
under, I totally get it. There's so many people now who want tattoos and there's such a need for it.
So if we go
So-
back to 5, so 1,000 hours would be 20 hours per week. Is that more reasonable?
That's
I think it's
100%,
Okay.
yes.
So if we say 1,000 hours, and then we have some sort of documentation for proficiency,
Yes.
for like a sign off,
Well,
to
I mean,
say,
with each artist we have to tattoo anyways, they have to file paperwork. We take paperwork from every single one of them, a
Yep.
waiver they have to
Medicine.
sign, a
Go ahead.
waiver they have to sign and stuff anyways. So if we have an apprentice under us, I can keep a file of that
Okay.
apprentice's waivers, of how many transactions they've had, or how many procedures they've done.
okay,
You know, that's not a problem with that either.
Okay.
So that, so
Perfect.
a logbook I wouldn't really keep, but I mean, for them to sit there and I have each client that they've done, or situation they've done, I can write what tattoo it was, whether it be large scale, small scale, how many hours that procedure took.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something like that would be, understandable. But as for like an actual logbook of hours, that'd be like them clocking out
I
on
mean,
the clock of at work, but.
I think that's perfectly fine, and I think that.
Especially since you'd be required to tell the client that
Right.
an apprentice was
Definitely.
doing
Right.
their work.
Right. And I think as long as you have as an establishment, and maybe that's some language that we can kind of build into that to say that, you know, we don't need all that documentation because you're overseeing them.
Right.
You keep that documentation. So if we get a complaint on that person when they have
Yes.
their own permit,
Yes.
we can go back and say, well, they had an apprentice permit. I'm going to come back to you and you're going to say, let me pull his file.
Right.
Here's his stuff, and this is what I signed off on.
Yep.
So as long as you have that, maybe we can add language in here that says that documentation, it's probably,
7 and 8 sort of touch on it. It says, during the apprenticeship period, the sponsors or the trainer's permit will be held responsible for any complaints.
Yep.
So that'd be important to keep track of what they're doing.
Yep.
And then number 8, the sponsoring practitioner is responsible to assure that the apprentice has mastered
Before
each
the procedure.
level.
yep.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just one question, because now you're doing an apprentice license. With that apprentice license, will they be able to actually do a tattoo? Because granted, there are no state regulations and everything is done by town, but usually apprentices usually, from what I understand, you have to have a license to physically do the tattoo. So will that apprentice license,
Yeah, because it falls under mine. That's what
Yeah.
they were saying.
it's
It
gonna
falls
fall under his
my
and would
license.
co- okay.
Yeah.
Yep,
Just want
it's
to clarify
covered.
that, that's all.
Yep, that would be
As long as
covered.
it's supervised, they'll be able to do that.
Right. Okay.
So-
And then for number 6, did we talk about this one? This is for
That's- we haven't
cosmetic
gotten to
only.
that one
Okay.
yet, yeah.
They're big one.
Before we get off of the waiver and documentation issue, we look at page 17, letter E.
Yep.
So did you say that each of your clients signs a waiver?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
and so that waiver with their signature on would
Yep.
end up in the apprentice's file?
Yes.
Or a
Yep.
copy of it? or-
Yeah.
or-
Absolutely.
Yeah, they have to know that
Okay.
an apprentice. is
Basically,
doing
what
it.
I keep them for, again, is God forbid something was to happen,
Yeah.
with a situation with an infection or anything like that, if they go to their doctor and the doctor says, hey, you got an infection, they can come back to me and cause me a lot of headaches. But I can look at them and say, well, God forbid I went to a court situation or anything like that, I can go to them and say, listen, this is the procedure I did on this day. They knew what the stipulations were, and the moment they leave, and just like any type of doctor office, the moment you leave my shop, it's in your hands. You know, staff is very easy to get, you know, things like that. Turns into cellulite, turns into all these other headaches that these people don't realize, that any normal person who's walking down the street, they do not realize. Something as plausible as washing your hands and grabbing a towel, that towel can be covered in infected stuff. It can cause you to get staph. A lot of everyday citizens don't realize this. So we have this paperwork that they go over, and we also give them a written and verbal aftercare before they leave our shop.
Okay.
So, I mean, with the waivers they sign, I can bring you guys over a copy of one of our waivers. I believe you have one on
We
file.
should already have it, because we
Yeah.
had to give them to you when we first opened up.
But it's a lot of stipulations on there that I show them that they have to read over before they're allowed to get tattooed.
Okay.
Is it worth putting language in here to the effect that the waivers for the apprentice will be kept on file?
So it does refer back that all like these regulations need to be followed, and there's already a section establishment record keeping. I mean, we can definitely put it in there as well, but all records need to be maintained for
I'm just
a
thinking,
minimum of
just
3
for
years.
consistency, because you guys are obviously doing a good job, and you're.
try.
Yeah, I mean, even out
You
of
guys
set-
aren't the problem. That's what
Even
I'm
out
saying.
of setup left us, we still have all their files there.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, you leave, goodbye, it stays.
And I have their license. Again, I do not, if you're licensed from my shop. You may be licensed through the town of Oxford, but you're licensed from my shop. So if you walk out of my shop and go work somewhere else, and it happened to be in the town of Oxford, you go apply for
You
another
get another
license.
license.
You ain't getting it from me. It's Victorian Inc.'s license, sorry. You're no longer under me. You can go explain to the Board of Health you're no longer, or the town that you're no longer under me, and you're working under this such shop.
And we had a couple people that were there, and again, because you gave out licenses, not apprentice licenses, we're not done with their apprenticeship. And I immediately contacted Tom and said, this person is no longer here. Just to let you know, the hours are not in, so if he applies to go somewhere else, he's not trained.
Right.
Okay.
You know? So like I said, we are, you know,
Yep.
kind of.
Okay, so anything else on the apprenticeship permitting before we get to number 6? Because I know that's,
No.
so,
You guys will want to make those changes, and
yep, and what we'll do is we'll make the changes, since there's gonna be some significant changes. We'll make the changes, and then we'll send them out again for another review.
Good.
But so, I mean, you know, it's, the thing is, you know, we don't ever wanna rush these things, because we understand that this is your
Well,
livelihood.
We've also never dealt with tattoo artists in this industry here like this before, who actually
Exactly.
care to.
And we
have
love it.
us
We
take
love
that
having
case.
you here, right?
Good, yeah.
I hate when we have regulations that come through and the subject matter experts are not here. And it's like, all right, well, I don't know. So I enjoy hearing your stories and helping us with writing this. So I do appreciate that. All right. So number 6, let's address that. So this, I want to just be aware that this is not for experienced people. Like, we're talking about apprenticeship only for permanent cosmetics.
Okay.
So the way that it states now, the period shall be a minimum of 200 hours, including 30 hours of observing before performing, and then performing at least 50 completed supervised procedures.
So this is where I gotta ask,
Yep.
how many hours did you guys sit in the classroom?
So I'm gonna have you just state your name for, if you could just state your name for the record. Okay?
So it's 100 hours, no more. Every school in Massachusetts is 100 hours, and that's it.
Okay.
So that's the school though, so
Right,
that
no,
goes back to
that's
the
why I was
training.
asking her, because I wanna know what the school is requiring of them to be there. So with this here being this way here, if this is them walking into a salon, where they're working in a salon atmosphere, maybe bring it down a little bit. I'd bring it down to the 100, 150 hours.
Okay, so if I could jump in while he's reading.
So, I mean, it can't, a lot of
I
times that's what you
think
have to
if
put
you
the
piggyback off of the tattoo artist.
Yep.
And do
We're
very
looking at a lot
similar
of
to
the same
the
things, yeah.
Okay.
same things, okay, because if they're apprenticing, they should be, I mean, you can't just say so many days, so many procedures, it doesn't work that way. You know, the artist that's training them really has to oversee what they're doing and say, yeah, they're qualified. You know, so if you go back To the hours, I mean, this was calling for what, 200?
Yeah, and I also, I mean, this is going back to microblading, but I probably wouldn't have my client, my apprentice would not probably do 50 tattoos before I licensed them.
Right.
Right.
To be honest with you,
That's what I
so
said,
to
that's
have
an
50
awful high
completed
number.
supervised procedures is kind of steep.
No, these procedures in general are much smaller than your average tattoo.
They take longer than my
Oh,
average
they-
tattoo.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They take about
Well-
2 to 3 hours for a microblading sitting.
Yeah.
When most of my tattoos hours are probably about an hour to an hour and a half at max.
It's still a tattoo, it's just done a different procedure.
Right. They're using different inks. They're using a different style machine than what we use.
It generally doesn't go as deep, correct?
What's that?
It doesn't go as deep.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's permanent, but not permanent, right?
Right.
After, yeah.
So my other so
how many procedures?
well, I'm wondering if we don't even put a procedure number.
Just put hours.
I think we
Just
just need to
hours.
do hours. And I think if we leave the language similar to 5, so we could very easily say the apprentice period shall be a minimum of 100 hours, period, and then use the same language that the apprentice's approval,
Yep.
blah, 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 will be responsible
to
for
practice.
determining that. Now, my only question is this. So would you take on an apprentice for permanent cosmetics without you knowing that you are not trained to do that?
No.
Okay.
We need the verbiage.
I just want to make sure
Yeah,
that
no.
we're clear. So I
So
want
all
that
the-
language
all
in
the,
here.
All the
we don't know
medical
what they're doing.
procedures.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
where the hard part comes in, because all the medical procedures, sterilization,
Yep.
that type of stuff, I can do that with them.
Yep.
But when it comes to the actual practitioner of doing the microblading or the powder brow or cosmetic makeup,
You can't supervise that.
I would not supervise it only because of the fact that I've never done it, which is very similar, okay, when it comes to certain things like that, with coloring the skin. I've done pigmentation where I've done areolas, things like that.
Yeah.
So the pigmentation of that is very similar, but mine lasts a lot longer than what
Right.
theirs does.
Okay.
So I mean, it's a little bit different in some aspects, and in other aspects, it's majorly different. So
Okay.
would I actually pick them up? No, absolutely not.
Okay.
But if they ever came to me and said, "Listen, I want to learn sterilization," I can do that with you all day long. I can do that with even to your machines, like teaching you how to clean your machines properly and things like that, because they have the similar machines. But just the actual microblading itself, I couldn't do. No.
So I guess my question is, why should the hours be so significantly different from body art for cosmetic? Because this isn't just
Because
microblading, it's other
99% of
permanent
cosmetics
makeup.
is going to be done in a school. If you're going to an apprenticeship at a salon,
And this is right now apprenticeship.
right, and that's why I'm agreeing with you. If you're doing an apprenticeship in a salon, hold on. You're doing an apprenticeship in a salon, you're going to be in a hair salon, okay? You're not going to have the same interactions you're going to have in a tattoo shop with them doing the microblading as you are with tattoos. It's not going to be, you're not going to have the same amount of clients coming through or anything like that. You're not going to have the same amount of people coming through for the microblading unless you specifically offer that period, which would bring them back to being a licensed or a credited school type practitioner. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, it's a catch-22.
I was gonna comment pertaining to the schools. When you go to a tattoo school, you're putting in a lot more hours, a lot more procedures than you do with the microblading. So it may have something to do with the type of procedure. They don't feel that you need as many. I gotta get them down there, 1 sec.
But as for the apprenticeship part of it, I think them being in the salon surrounding and learning the procedures that way, they're not going to put in the amount of hours. Again, just like the tattoo apprenticeship, they're not going
It's
to be
only eyebrows, it's
Right.
not the rest of the
But
body.
this
Right.
is for cosmetics, right? So there's lips, so there's other,
lips,
there's
yes,
other
eyeliner,
things.
So,
eyebrows,
if-
there's areola, but that's about it, and then blush sometimes. But a lot of places don't offer
So you're not going to have somebody coming in for microblading every single day. You'll have a microblading this day. You'll have blush this day. Maybe you'll have a lip liner this day. You're not going to have 50 clients strictly for microblading.
I'm just talking about hours.
I'm saying with the hours, even in hours in general, you're not going to have somebody specifically putting it in that time for that same thing over and over again. Like when a tattoo, you come in for a tattoo, our procedures are 99% of the time going to be the same thing. Their procedures are not.
I mean, I think maybe that's why it's 50, because it's so many different.
But if you're gonna, so that means you need 50
Okay.
procedures in microblading, 50 procedures in cosmetic makeup,
No.
50 procedures.
Well, yeah,
then-
'cause they're all
yeah,
different
'cause they're all
procedures.
But this doesn't specify that. I'm just
But
telling
that's
you
why,
that
that's why I'm
and-
saying that it can't be that much.
Right.
Because if you're gonna license somebody from microblading and license them from makeup, it's a different license. It's maybe not to you guys, but in our eyes, that's a whole different situation.
I think this defines like,
This is a generalization of it.
yes, yes.
permanent.
Right.
Permanent cosmetics includes microblading, micropigmentation, which is
So-
like the blush and things like that. And permanent makeup, which is different than microblading, which is semi-permanent, right?
Permanent makeup is like actual tattooing.
Right, okay, of the face.
Yes.
If you go to school to become a tattoo artist, they require 25 procedures. If you go to school to do microblading, the American Academy of Pigmentation only requires 4 procedures. So it's a lot less than as a tattoo artist. Okay?
So I'm gonna just bring back one more question. So to come in and perform or do permanent cosmetics like microblading, micropigmentation, etc., is it a requirement to attend a school prior to coming in and doing this? Okay, that's what I need to know. So my other thought is this: if they go to school, right, and you are extensively trained, I can see the hours being 100 for an apprenticeship. But if you're not going to school and you come in off and you learned it online or whatever, I could see those hours being more.
Okay, so that's,
I can see why you would want them more, but I don't think they'll get them more
No.
by being in the salon. Because you're not going to, if you go into a microblading class where you're extensively sitting there, you can bang out those hours in a matter of a couple of weeks because you're in that class that many hours a day.
Right.
If you're in a salon, most apprentices at salons, they're going to be sweeping floors and that type of stuff. They're going to have maybe one procedure every couple of days.
I guess my only question on that though is that if the national only requires 4 procedures, why would we want to,
Bump it up to
do
50.
Bump it up to 50?
So I think we've talked about slashing that and doing hours, so I think the conversation
we're just
now
gonna
is
go- we're just
hours.
gonna
Well,
do
the
hours.
hours, they only require 100 hours. I mean,
But you're saying that that was for a microblading.
for anything
That's
to
for
do-
any cosmetic
type of
makeup.
cosmetic
All
procedures, okay?
cosmetic.
Yeah,
And that's for the classroom.
okay.
right, so that's
The
the
American
difference.
Academy of Pigmentation, which is national, requires 100 hours apprenticeship, 65 hours of classwork, 35 hours homework, and 4 procedures. That's all that they require for national to be
Or
licensed.
to license somebody for microblading, micropigmentation.
All of that stuff.
And
Exactly.
permanent.
All together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's all classified under the same thing. There's no actual license for that. Everything is all considered body art. They don't have, none of that's separated as far as the state or national.
And they still get
Anybody-
licensed in towns or states as a body art
Body art
practitioner.
practitioner.
So I think we just word it basically the way that we're doing in number 5. We cut it down and say it's 100 hours, no hours of observation, no number of completed procedures, because it sounds like this is just, it's too complex to make it 50. I'm talking,
Yeah, I'm
please.
Sorry.
To do 50 across the board. So, if we do 100 hours and then have the wording the same as number 5,
That's like the
then
minimum.
that's your bare minimum. And then the apprentice, sponsor will be responsible for determining proficiency. But I'd like to see language in there, if you guys agree, that if you're gonna do an apprenticeship for permanent cosmetics, then you have to do it underneath a supervisor with experience in
Credibility
permanent
of some sort.
cosmetics.
Which would actually push them more up to go towards a school than rather doing it in a salon where you guys wouldn't have to worry about so much of a headache of this.
Yeah.
you
That's
know?
what I was just gonna say. The only difference that I would do is you're saying 100 hours. That's what's required in school.
That's the next section. We'll
Okay.
discuss that next, yeah.
Well, I mean,
So
everything.
apprenticeships,
And going to school would basically eliminate the apprenticeship.
Yeah.
correct, and what I'm saying is apprenticeships should probably be more, because it's not in a school setting. You're not sitting there with other people doing all of this stuff. When you're in a school setting, you're learning
You
how.
just contradicted everything I just tried to explain to them.
Okay, well,
Getting a little
Because-
confusing.
Yeah, because
So-
they don't have the time period to go.
So
do it.
Kayla, is it Kayla, correct?
Yes.
Hi. I saw you nodding your head. What are you nodding your head in agreement on? Because you know this more than anyone in this room.
It'd be like 200 hours for an apprentice that's not going to school.
Okay.
At least working one-on-one with someone.
Okay.
in a salon.
that's what I was saying, more when you're doing the
Which is-
apprenticeship
A little
versus
more
the
without
school.
the
Because when I mentioned that, I saw you nodding your head, so I wanted to go back to you. You've gone through school, right? You know what the experience is like. We don't, and I think it's almost, it's the same thing, even I use nursing school, right? You get so many hours of time and, that translates over into continuing education credits to get relicensed in the state if you were in school. If you think about it, same concept.
Yep.
So in school, you're saying that you're actually practicing on clients. Okay. Whereas if you're learning in a salon,
You wouldn't be for the
some
first
people,
while.
but
Exactly.
who knows, right? Okay.
So if they come in and they want an apprenticeship permit through Oxford, the minimum would be 100 hours if they have gone through whatever you use the term, accredited school. I use accredited. I know that's probably not right in your world. But a school for that. And then if they have not gone to school, then it's a 200-hour apprenticeship.
I'm gonna keep it 200 in here because this is the apprentice section. The next section, we can do that differentiation.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think
So, but if they're coming in for an apprenticeship permit,
Yep,
they wouldn't have gone to school.
right. So that's where we would have to go to the earlier section
Experience.
where that's
Do
where
it
we
with
can
the proposal.
specify. If they've gone to school, like, they would do school and then less
Right, they're
apprenticeship
not coming in
hours would
applying
be
for a
needed.
license, they're coming in applying for an apprenticeship license.
Because really,
Right.
the apprenticeship in these regulations are designed to meet the requirement of experience.
Okay.
So if you have the experience elsewhere, then you don't even need the apprenticeship permit.
Exactly.
You have it because you have the
Right.
experience.
Right.
So we can define, like you were
Okay.
saying, if you went to school, if you.
okay, so then we can do it that way. All right. Okay, so we'll revisit that once we get the language set
Yep.
and the experience part. So then practitioner experience is starting on page 14, 15.
Yep. And a little bit on 16.
Yep.
It's 15. 14 starts here.
So basically, if somebody is coming in and wants to apply for a permit,
Practitioner permit.
for a
Yep.
practitioner permit, based on what this says right now, without changing anything, we're still going back to, they have to have 1,800 hours of experience.
Right, so that should probably be changed to mirror
Yep.
what we put in the apprentice.
Okay.
And we had also said, you would have to, show that you did work on at least 100 clients for body art. So do we want to get rid of that because we just talk about hours in the apprenticeship?
That's what you just said. She wanted to get rid of that.
Okay, I was like, whoa, wait a
I would get rid of that, because where's the proof?
Exactly.
There's no proof in that one, so I would just,
Well, there's waivers, right?
Yeah, once they have their license from another state or another town. you know,
Again,
how-
an artist leaves my shop, I keep those waivers.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna just hand out people's personal information, you know?
Is everything in yellow new?
Yes, has been added. Yep.
So wait, if someone, using the example that you gave earlier, if someone comes into town and had a shop somewhere else, another state, another town, and didn't do an apprenticeship, but instead tattooed clients, wouldn't it be good to have the option to not have the hours, but to have the actual experience?
Which it says you need to, like,
Well,
you
no,
have to
because
do
you
one
got
of those, you
some
have to have a
clients,
permit.
you got some tattoos that'll be, again, you have some tattoos that are gonna be an hour long, and you have some tattoos that I put in for 7, 8 hours on that tattoo.
So this says you would, like, there's a couple different things, and so you can
So
either have
full-time.
a license from another state, or within Massachusetts showing that you've been licensed for at least a year, that you've practiced for at least a year.
Practice for at least a year.
you're almost
Yep.
better off to do hours than clients.
So change everything that we might need to, okay.
Because you're right, your entire day could be taken up with one client. So you have one client of 100, but yet you just spent 10 hours on them.
My only concern with that is that we license annually. We don't check how many hours they do.
Right.
So nowhere in our regulations does it tell someone they have to record their hours. So how are they gonna document to us that in Webster, they did this many hours for the, like,
think
that's
it's
the
just,
problem
I
with
think
that.
it's
You can't-
assigned. I think what it comes down to is it's part of the application process where it says you are attesting that you have
So
completed.
just a self-attestation.
Yep, 800 hours. I mean, I think of us, we don't ever have to show proof of our contact hours to get our nursing license through the state. We check a box and we sign it. And then if we're audited, then we have the proof, which would be what we would do in this, a similar case.
So
So why wouldn't 1 year licensed operation be acceptable?
in case it's less than 1,000 hours,
It could
I
be
think is the concern.
Licensed for a year and put in less than 1,000 hours, and therefore that wouldn't be enough experience.
It's 20 hours a week.
But we would get rid of the at least 1 year. We would just say 800 hours, right?
I might also include, if we're having them self-attest, we might want to say, still keep that year in there, because on our permits, they'll see it says the date it's been issued, right? So what if someone's permit has really only been good for a month, but they say, oh, I self-attest, I did this many hours in a month.
Okay.
So we're talking about practitioners here, not apprentices.
Correct.
Correct.
That are coming to town.
If I just may jump in on that, I agree with the timeframe, 100%, the year. But as far as the hours go, you spoke with many of the Board of Health. They don't require this. So we have somebody come in from Southbridge, and I'll tell you right now, Southbridge is very lax. You're not gonna get any hours.
He's
You have
talking about
somebody
like
come in from Uxbridge,
Okay,
you're
well,
not gonna
he's
get.
talking about, like, we do a lot of guest artist work.
Yep.
Like I said, one of my artists just left and they went to Maryland for a week. So she got a temporary license in Maryland.
That's
Okay.
not what I was talking
Hold on. So say if somebody comes from a different town or something like that into us, they may not have the guidelines of what you're asking for, that's all.
So to like add to this even more, right? There are a lot of communities also add into their regulations visitors. Like Boston, they have those shows where people come. So that's an additional piece we could add to our regulations
I
if
was
that's
gonna
something you
suggest
really
it.
wanted.
So let's add a statement about visitor, or whatever you call them, guest
Yeah, guest
tattooists.
artists, yeah.
Yeah, guest artists.
Which is fine, but again, you
Okay.
have to go back. When you're bringing an artist in from another town, Worcester, Uxbridge, Southbridge, they don't have any of these requirements. So for you to say, I need proof that you've done 800 hours, you're not gonna get this from any of the other towns. Which I realize that this is a liability thing on you guys that you don't wanna have, and I understand that, but that's gonna crimp us from bringing people in from other towns.
So, but I think what Carrie was saying is you self-attest. You
Yeah,
self-attest that you need to show you've had a permit for a year, and you self-attest you've done at least this many hours. Because it's difficult to prove how many hours you've
Yeah.
done. So it's a self-attestation piece. And I do know that a lot of communities have adopted the model regs. We had the model regs. I'm on a committee right now where we're looking to update those model regs to include training hours. I do know there are communities in our area that require 2 years experience. That has been the common, it's either the model regs or it's 2 years. So I feel like we're kind of in the
How do you get
middle.
licensed for 2 years experience if
These
you can't get
communities
if you
require
can't get licensed?
2 years actual experience in the area they will practice in. And that's,
But
when
how
I
do you
spoke
get
with,
licensed? That's what I don't understand is how do you get licensed in the area to work in a business or a salon or whatever it may be
which
if
is
you don't have that many hours?
which is why we have put in this apprenticeship, right? So that you can go to a community that requires 2 years
Regardless of that,
experience and you
you're
can
still,
get
you're
that.
still you're putting on, I think it's just, they're putting such a stipulation on it that you can't get licensed into another town.
Right. So what you're saying is, the person in Southbridge has been tattooing for a year. They come to Oxford to get a license, you now tell them they have to get an apprentice license because they don't have.
No.
We're saying that's good enough
That's good enough.
documentation.
That's good enough.
Our regulations, these proposed regulations.
So let's just look through F1. So to have a permit as a practitioner, your experience is either copy of a license from another city or town, right?
Or
And that you-
another state.
or another state, and that you practice there for a year. I don't know how we would figure that out. We would just
Well,
get
their
records
their
from.
license
It's their
would be-
permit,
So the permit would say that they've been there a year.
when it's been issued and when it
Yes.
So
expires,
that's-
that
Is
type.
now-
That
that-
checks off that issue that you had brought out.
Well, it doesn't, because is that a stipulation of someone who is a apprenticeship licensed or
Doesn't-
someone from school licensed? Because now, if I go to a tattooing school for 4 months, I get licensed in Texas, I come now here and say, I just finished school, I've done 4 months of schooling,
So
I'm
that
considered
comes-
a licensed artist.
That comes later. That's another option later on.
Okay, well, let's say, because I'm considered a licensed artist,
Yeah.
then you can't license me.
There's a
because-
couple of options of how you can get a license
And then 2 would be
within Massachusetts, another city
in
and town.
Mass, another city or town. That's or, right? So either that other state, another city or town in Mass. The third option is another country.
But again, being licensed in another town, I mean, I could go tomorrow and get licensed in, say, Webster. And be like, you know what? I'm not working for these guys. They're jokes, whatever, blah, blah, and then they come here.
It says 1 year.
License and practice.
I
for at
understand
least
that.
Oh, okay.
So the problem is that say they haven't been working under somebody for a year. Now they come here and they can't get licensed now because they haven't been working in the state of Massachusetts for over a year.
So then they'd have to do the apprenticeship.
Right, but they've already been a licensed artist.
That's
That's not right. To give somebody a license in another town or state, become licensed, and then you gonna tell them they have to go back to an apprenticeship because they're in the town of Oxford?
But it's also tough because you have said that there should be experience if you're going to be licensed. So it's unfortunately on those other communities that have not yet updated their regulations that requires experience to be licensed. Because right now they're permitting people that just have the bloodborne pathogens, have the skin course, and have CPR and first aid,
Yeah,
and
there
you
was-
can get it. And I think we all agree here that that's not necessarily right because, as you've said, it takes a lot of experience to do
I
the
guess it
art
just breaks
correctly.
down to the certain situation.
But this is a lot different than what you were saying at the beginning of the meeting, which was you should have a lot of experience. You should have somebody who's been practicing for 3
What
or
I'm saying
5
is
years.
the timeline. The timeline for every person, I guess again, it's got to be a stipulation of the person because every person's timeline can be different. And that's my biggest concern is that you could have somebody who's been tattooing 25 years and not know more than one person's been tattooing for 6 months.
I mean, unfortunately, that we have to
Yeah, I mean,
standardize it
it's
somehow. I mean, we
for us.
can't personally interview people to get, your approval or someone else's approval on them. It's hard.
So,
It's hard.
just to, because I got a thought, because I got lots of thoughts. It's either good or bad. But I get what you're saying. I get it, and I think you get where we're coming from as well. So it's how do we meet in the middle ground to make sure that it's safe for everyone. But so if you have that situation there, right, where someone's been tattooing, I'm not talking permanent makeup. We're just
We're not there
talking.
yet.
We're not there yet. I'm kind of bucketing these. So if we have that situation and they're in Southbridge and they've been tattooing for 6 months in Southbridge and now they want to come here, they want to work in your shop. Okay? I'm guessing you talk to them, you interview them, you make sure they're qualified. You know more than we do. If we were to somehow have, if it is less than which would go to your variance, right? If they have less than the year experience, can we get a sign off from the shop owners that they are taking responsibility for that person if it's under a year? Because they know the experience more than we do. So he is right in a sense where we don't know that, but I get it.
But that goes to the apprenticeship because as an apprentice, you're working under that person's license.
I
But
guess
you
the
can
wording
already
just- the wording
you
is
can
hard
already
because I'll be
include
honest
your.
with you, if I walked into a shop, and granted I have a lot of experience now, but if I walked into a shop after being licensed and I walked in there and they said, listen, I got to license you as an apprentice, I'd be like, shove it.
Going to
And
another
walking
town.
out.
And that's what's gonna happen, they're gonna go to another town. I just want to go back and ask you a question, because you mentioned responsibility. Who's, would they take the responsibility? What do you mean by responsibility? I mean,
So it's kind of like, it's not, I guess responsibility is the wrong word. We're taking your professional expertise to let us know that you want this person,
Right.
that this person is, the work, their clients, or what, you're comfortable with hiring them with less than 1 year experience.
the reason I ask that is because we're fully licensed
Yep. So the
insured and
word
everything, but-
responsibility is probably not the right term.
Yeah,
but-
and the whole thing may be moot as far as we're concerned anyway, because if somebody come in with 6 months' experience, we're not gonna hire them. We're requiring 3 years, 4 years' experience before we even wanna talk to them. So,
I'm just saying that you could have a guest artist coming through or somebody like
Yeah,
that who's
exactly.
practiced in another country or another situation where they have not been licensed in the United States or Massachusetts. I got friends of mine who are tattoo artists from Ecuador and other places where.
Yeah.
But
where-
if we put language in here for
That we
guest
could-
artists, then
yes.
we're covered.
Right. But that's what I'm, say he's a guest, say he's no longer a guest artist, he's coming from Ecuador because he wants to come work for me.
Yeah, I just think they should be the
But,
same.
but the apprenticeship puts the onus on you, right? So you are, if he applies for apprentice license, under you, you decide what he
That's a
can
slap.
practice.
And honestly, it's an insult, they're gonna walk out.
But
Yeah.
if they're practicing for a year in another country, we have that already in the regulation here.
But it's stating here that they have to, well, I don't know.
It's
You're
an
saying if
or.
it's under a year.
Yeah.
They're saying if it's under a year. They've only been practicing under a
So
year.
how do we address the people that want to come through with less than a year experience?
So, did we also say earlier that the licenses, a standard license to practice is tied to the shop?
Yes.
Yes.
They're practicing. So, I think that leaves the door open for, you come before the board, ask for a variance.
I think something that would, it's per situation is what I'm thinking it's gonna come down to.
That's, we can't cover every
Right.
opportunity, but we can give you the opportunity to
Option.
come before the board and make a case.
And I appreciate that. That changes the
That's
whole
fine.
ballgame.
But that's all of our all Board of Health regulations have that in that. There's always an allowance to come in front of the Board of Health
I don't
to
know, maybe-
request a
maybe-
variance.
Okay,
read
it's just
things
that it seems like this is
So-
black and white, and I
Yeah.
guess that's what
So
we're
would
pushing,
it,
yeah.
would it make you feel more comfortable if there was a statement in here that specifically says variance, even though we know, and we can tell you now.
Right.
But if there's a statement in there that says exceptions to these can be.
Brought to the board
Can be
or-
brought in front of the board for discussion, and then that takes
solves
care of
the
all
whole
the under
situation.
1 year and your guests.
Well, that solves a lot of situations anyways, because no matter what happens with any situation, we can now bring it to you and say, listen, okay, this is what we'd like to do. This is what's going on.
Yeah.
These people have only been working for this amount of line or working this many years, but we know where they're coming from, who taught them, what's going on, and they're credited also. Can we push them through?
Because our biggest fear is that we're gonna push people away. They're gonna come in and say, oh, regulations are too stiff here. I'm going over to Webster. I'm going over to Southbridge. We might as well, just shut the doors. We're not gonna be able to get people in.
Yeah.
And like I said, I realize we're talking general. We're not talking our shop. Okay? Other people are gonna come into this town, get licensed, and screw this, and this is gonna happen. Okay? We're not doing that. And I said, I know that's totally different. So I
Okay,
can understand that you
so-
have to go generic.
So if we keep going with what we were gonna do with 4 and just keep hours on there,
Yep,
right?
Yep.
And
1,000 hours.
we'll keep the 1 year, but, so we'll keep it the way it is, but there'll be a statement that says exceptions or variances can be made upon presentation to the board with blah, 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 whatever the language is.
The only comment I'm going to make about that, ideally, I'd prefer to have a section at the end about variances,
Okay.
like you see in most regulations, because
We
then
can do that.
realistically, you should be going through every section and writing that. So I know it's
agree. No, I agree with
tricky,
you.
but
I
like
agree with you.
usually in regulations, you see that section at the end.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're right, they should be reading the whole thing, but we know people don't read the whole thing.
It's just tough because then what sections do you put it in? What sections do you not put it in when it actually applies to the
Yep.
whole regulations?
Okay. All right, so,
Well, we could meet in the middle, and under the purpose and scope, I mean, what's the whole point of having this?
Right.
Health and safety, right? We want
Mhm.
to make sure nobody gets sick, nobody gets infections, people do what they're supposed to do, the shop does what it's supposed to do, and then say something along the lines of a case-by-case basis for
yeah,
variances.
we could do that at the beginning
Right
and
at
then
the,
the
right at the
end.
outset.
Yeah, because that's what people read, they read the beginning and the end.
That's what I did.
I kind of feel like exceptions should be at the end.
Well, we'll vote on it, Dave.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Well, and I think the
just
other
saying
piece
that-
too is it's
that
kind of like if you are
And
reading
that
it,
And that means it's exceptions to everything,
right, but if you're reading it from the beginning, you know that there are variances that can be made, and then you finish up at the end and go, oh yeah, I can create a variance if I don't agree with any of this. So, at least it's in both places, it's not got no harm really on that piece. So I guess, so if we leave that and we decrease the hours, if we go to number 5, which is your permanent cosmetic piece of it.
Yep.
So that talks about the hours.
It's two parts. The first
Yep.
part is the course is what they were talking
Yep.
about. So having that course, and making sure that that course covers those materials, which pretty much all of the accredited courses cover that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then the second part, which I think is the biggest concern, is the number of hours. And I would say we would already get rid of the number of procedures because that's what we did in the apprenticeship. So right now it's the number of hours that we would require.
And I would bring it back to what the again, if you're going to a school, it's accredited, it's all set. But if they're going to apprentice under someone in a shop or something like that, or a salon, then yes, leave it at the 200 hours.
So you're saying no hours if you've gone to a class.
Exactly.
You're already
Because
getting
you've
hours
got
in the
it.
class, yeah. You're going to a school for this. You don't need to apprentice after that. You're being brought to a school and taught how to do this procedure.
I just struggle, like, for me, 100 hours is 2.5 weeks, right? So
Okay.
I go to class for 2.5 weeks, and then I can set up shop.
You go to a doctor.
microblading.
You go to a doctor, and that doctor is a licensed doctor in school. He comes out, and you're gonna tell me he can't get to that procedure because he hasn't done enough hours doing it in a.
It's
in a
usually
school?
residency,
doctor's a
you're
little bit
working
different,
on.
but
No, it's
Doctor-
not. No, hold
Working-
on.
All right,
Excuse me.
hold-
It's not
hold
though.
on.
But that's bloodborne pathogens. That's what we're licensed in. That's what we're trained in to treat and deal with bloodborne pathogens. I'm going into the same aspect where I'm dealing with the same blood, the same diseases, the same everything else as a doctor's office.
I think
So-
this one with the, like facial cosmetics,
I do facial tattoos all day long, just not cosmetic.
maybe the artistry is, maybe that's why they had, so many procedures on there, because it's
But
more
again,
of a-
the state regulations only only
Only
need 2
requires
procedures.
four.
Four
I-
procedures, sorry.
That's not state,
Those are
that's
na-
national.
Yeah, those are national
Right.
standards that
And-
AAM has
But I'm
come
agreeing
up
with the hours if they're working out of a salon.
The
If they-
200 hours.
Right,
yeah.
if you're going to a school to be taught to do this, again, you're sitting in a classroom and you're scrutinizing and teaching, being taught this, then I don't agree with that at all. But if you're going to a salon where you're just working under somebody in a salon, it's not a school setting, it's not,
Or a
then
tattoo
yes.
shop or anywhere
Or a
else,
tattoo
yeah.
shop, yeah. So say she ends up getting licensed to become someone to teach to do this, okay? Which she wants to do. So say she picks up that license and now is licensed to teach. The accredited school licensed her to teach. She brings somebody in to the salon or to the tattoo shop, then yes, they should have to work 200 hours.
Yep.
But being in a school setting where you're going to a school and you're sitting in a classroom all day long, I don't feel it's comparable at all for the 200 hours.
Do you see any value in the observation hours, like watching another practitioner perform? No.
Because you literally.
'Cause they
do
separated that.
hands-on the entire time.
Right, not even observing.
Yeah, they had to do it in school,
So
so.
like
That's
when
why
I
they're
took
actually
my class, we did observe, and if I wanted to, I can still go back and request, hey, I
Mhm.
want to observe you today. She lets us do that,
Mhm.
but it's so, like with the classroom itself, it's so different because you are sitting there and you are learning all day, and
Mhm.
that's your 100 hours.
Mhm.
And it's such a, like, I hate to say it, but I'm assuming it's a lot more simple than a regular tattoo. That's why they don't look like a body tattoo.
Right.
That's why they don't require anything else. Like, it's really easy.
That's what I was saying earlier. If you go to a tattoo school, they require 25 tattoos to be done, procedures to be done. And they're small, they're not all-day tattoo type things. They're small tattoos. Where with the micropigmentation, they only require 4 nationally.
Because
it's
at
a-
9
it's a-
times out of
it's a
10,
lot
the
easier
procedure's
of a
gonna be a
process.
2.5-hour procedure.
Right.
You spend, 100 hours drawing eyebrows over and over and over again. And how can you really screw that up after leaving school and being taught everything? There's only so many ways you can do the tattoo, like the eyebrow, the cosmetic, not even just eyebrows, but cosmetic tattoos. There's only so, you draw it this way or this way. With tattooing, you need more hours because it's so much more particular, if that makes sense.
Her wheels are turning up there.
So we scrap our observing.
I think what you've got here, I mean,
Procedures.
you're 100%
Just keep it
correct and
to
you're 100% wrong. If you've gone to school, that's one thing. If you're going into a place to train, that's a total different ballgame. Because when you're
But
training.
we've already
Yeah, they've already
separated.
approached that.
That's already
No,
done.
no.
That's why I said I agree with this whole
We're
situation.
talking about if you didn't
Apprenticeship.
go to school
Right.
Right.
and
What I'm-
you need hours.
That was this whole
And I'm
conversation.
saying if you went to school, you shouldn't need hours.
You don't
If you
under
went-
this.
Okay, you're saying you don't.
Right?
But correct me if I'm
So-
wrong, Ricky was saying you do.
Correct, yeah, so this part, so you would need the course and then that.
She wants to do both.
And they're looking to strike B.
Oh, this isn't
totally.
or.
That's not
My
where
bad.
it's both.
That's where my issue is.
Gotcha.
If you go to school, that's one thing. If you're in a shop, whether it be a salon or a tattoo shop or whatever, and you're training,
So we're-
that's a whole different ballgame. You
We're
need more
repeating ourselves
hours.
over
you
and over
need-
again. The bottom line is,
Okay.
we're just saying it should be
Gotcha.
or,
So
not
you're
both.
saying that going to school guarantees proficiency.
Yes.
I can get a
Yes.
license to.
Exactly.
Because
Sure.
otherwise it's
Stitches
falling
in
back
your
on that
forehead,
credit
but
association.
Is what we're
I
after.
shouldn't do that by
Right.
myself on my first day.
Program as well.
Right.
I don't know, that's a tough one. We can definitely table that. It's getting late, and how much more productive can we be?
I know. I mean, I think we need to, I need to do a little more research, or we need to do a little
But
more
this
research.
is
in general.
helpful, right? Like
Yeah.
Yeah, this is very
Very
Because we don't even
helpful.
know what to,
Um,
what we didn't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
I do know that they're going onto the agenda. So Emma and Kayla, I do know that you guys have applications in. So what I want you guys to know is that your applications were in before these regulations were even reviewed. So you will not have to follow these regulations. Plus, they're not approved right now. So you would go underneath what our existing regulations are. So you will have no issue getting your permits, if that makes you feel any better. Because they're not approved, and we'll be signing your permits way before this gets approved, because they're right there. So you will not have to follow this. However, this isn't the end of the story for this. We need to really
Your guidelines
figure-
are very well with this. I think it should be vice versa, that's all.
Okay, so I think what we can do is we'll gather some more additional information, about specifically page 15, 5A and B.
Yeah.
I think we've hashed everything else out.
Yeah.
But in terms of that, we'll think about it. Question though, for you ladies, both of you went to school, right? Do you have a copy of the curriculum for the school? I'm just curious, because I would like to see some sort of an outline on, like what type of hands-on they're actually allowing you to do.
So I reached out to Summit and I haven't heard back from them. That's where Kayla went. I reached out to Monique Garcia, who is Emma's trainer. She's been very helpful, and I can pass this along. And she outlined exactly what the curriculum covers.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to.
Well, you know what? Let's
can email that out.
Can you? Yeah, I think
Yep.
if you could send that to us so that we can review it. If
And
so,
I
you have
assume
Emma's,
Summit-
right?
Yes, and I assume Summit is pretty.
Okay. Okay.
I'll follow up with Summit, but I'm assuming it covers the same.
All right. So we'll continue. We'll continue to do some research and have some more discussions about that piece in general. Okay. But I want to thank you all very much. This is an extremely insightful. I'm sure.
Glad to see you guys have this many concerns, because when I first came to this town, there wasn't concern.
Oh no,
Not
no.
at all.
We always have concerns.
And I'm there, and like I said, but we're there at that shop all day long, every day, except for Monday and Tuesdays if I don't have to be, because I try to take the day off. But if you guys ever want to call over and be like, hey, what's your opinion on this? I have no problem. Again, I've worked with numerous artists over the years. I'm best friends with one of the biggest distributors in the world, worldwide. And we do a lot of conventions through different states, different towns, things like that. So if you have questions on certain things that other states might require for us to do, we're actually doing a convention April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd at Mohegan Sun. And because it's on tribal ground, there is no regulations.
Yeah.
There are no medical regulations. So it's like, hey, you didn't
You're
need
not
any-
used to
I was
that,
like, bro,
right?
you didn't need any money for that? And he was like, no. We have our guidelines that we follow, but they have no accreditation at all of what to do. So I mean, if you guys ever want to reach out, I'm glad to see you guys have such stipulations you have. But some things just need to
Yeah.
back off a little bit on
And-
some things and push forward on more.
And that is
That's
why we put
helpful.
this up for discussion, and, you know, we don't tend to rush our regulations as a board. Rika is new at our, discussions about regulations. But yeah, no, we tend to really kind of dig deep into our regs to try to make sure that it does protect the health and well-being of the people in town, but also protects you guys too, without being harsh that we're pushing business away, right? So,
We
So-
want you guys to be in town. We
Right,
want
yeah.
you from the business,
Yeah.
but our job here is to protect public health and your health, so.
so thank you all very much.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure we'll be in touch again, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank-
The only, I know, Emma, to issue your permit, I still need the fee.
You
So-
have it.
I gave you a check when I
We gave
dropped
you-
off the paperwork the other day.
Oh, so Shane must have put it in.
Yeah, there was
I'll-
a check,
Yeah.
there was a check attached to it.
Okay, I'll double check with Shane then.
Anytime I've sent
Um,
over, an application,
We
I
automatically
cut the
attach
check.
check, yeah.
I don't
Okay,
accept their checks, I write the check to you.
okay, so I'll follow up. I'll have them sign it either way, so it'll be all set, and then I just won't email it until I confirm that. Okay.
And send it to their homes?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
don't
the
send to the
only,
shop.
we've had issues with stuff being sent to the shop. I can't tell you how many times things were sent over there, licenses. Don't know where the heck they went. I had to come over here and get them reissued. For some
They
reason.
put them in
things-
the mailboxes for the upstairs and stuff like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's $2.99, but there's apartments upstairs and stuff too, so we don't even have UPS
I've
delivered to us.
I've gone to the mailbox, the
So-
post office
Right.
and round, and we get junk mail, but the good stuff we don't get, you know?
alrighty.
Thank
Thank
again.
you all very
Thank
much.
you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, so, I think these are quick ones. Updating the Oxford rep for Region Two.
Yep, just so, in July, you voted, Allison Novak to be your, representative at the Region Two meetings, and I just wanted to update that, to state myself, so if you have no issues when you sign permits, I'll just put that document
Perfect, do we
in there
need
as
to
well.
vote on that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I will entertain a motion to, update the Oxford representative for Region Two to Rika Starrett.
Make the motion as stated.
I second it.
Any discussion?
No.
No.
Nope, with there being none, I call for the vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, approved.
Congratulations.
All right, and then
Current
food
as well.
permit application, so mobile food establishment and then temporary food establishment.
Yep, so I just updated
Yeah, they looked
these,
great, actually.
so that we have separate ones, because there's some separate stipulations, particularly for the mobile, like the hawker and peddler that you're looking for. They really should have a base of operations, so all of that, and then the temporary as well, just to make sure that we know where they're preparing the food, that it's licensed. So I just want to show you, what I'm looking to implement. If you have any questions, comments on it, want me to add or change anything.
They looked really good.
Okay.
And you included the, that like new section in it too, I saw, right? What the heck was it?
Depending on the time, is the length of time for the temporary? Is that what you're referring to?
Let me see. Where was it? I just looked at it. Oh, the risk categories.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I saw that you included that, because we had a conversation about that. I couldn't remember which one it was. Listen, I worked last night. All right. Yeah, so no, I mean, I thought these looked good. Do we have to vote in on these for approval, or are we good?
No.
Okay. Perfect. All righty. And then permit reviews and correspondence?
Yep, so this is the correspondence. This was supposed to go last month.
What am I doing with this?
It's just looking at it. It's just for you to look at. It was sent to us. For your, it's for your information.
Feel the seal.
Just
And
feel
then-
the seal?
So the one with my name on it is coming around for you to sign. That was just for you to see what was voted on last
All right.
time.
Very good.
Feel the seal.
Nice.
That's it. Nice short file this time.
All right. Dave's reading the whole correspondence.
I haven't seen it before, so I'm trying to figure out what it is. Okay, it's just that,
It's just notices, and it's technically addressed to the Board of Health, so I like to pass it along, so.
All right, good. I'll let you sign those. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn the Board of Health meeting at 8 PM.
I make a motion.
go ahead.
I make the motion as stated.
I second the motion.
All right, any discussion?
No.
Nope, with there being none, call for the vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, meeting adjourned.